back. We apologize for our mini hiatus. There's some scheduling conflicts and a little bit of some issues that we couldn't really take care of, but we just decided that we wanted to go with another podcast episode. Really kind of gave us some time to create some content and just gather some information to talk about. Obviously, this is not the All-Star Game selection show, which we apologize for. We've run into some circumstances that are just out of our hands. But nonetheless, we're going to be bringing you the All-Star Game on Monday the 26th. So without further ado, let's get right into Episode 6 of LISN Overtime. Then it's been an interesting month, to say the least. There's been a massive shakeup in the Suffolk County High School Hockey League standings. The picture looks ever so slightly different than it did a month ago.
Right.
And I think, where do you want to start with recapping this extraordinary month in the Suffolk County High School Hockey League?
I think we could start off with last night and how St. Anthony's, the Ice Friars, come in with a 9-game winning streak. Their last game that they lost was against East Islip, and ironically enough, their first game that they lose in this 9-game stretch is against that same East Islip Chiefs team.
Yeah, that was an interesting game. It was a big pond hockey game. I mentioned that a couple times on the broadcast last night. A lot of open ice, a lot of space, a lot of back and forth. It never really settled down, and it's interesting because that's where East Islip thrives. So I'm just really intrigued that Sachem allowed that to happen as much as it did, but also East Islip seems to have figured out a strategy that works for them against the Friars. They've allowed just 2 goals in 2 games against them, and something else that's interesting is it's the first time that they've allowed less than 2 goals in 2 months.
Yeah, definitely. They come into the game East Islip not getting a win in their last 2 games, so you figured the energy and what's the word I'm looking for? The desperation was kind of there to kind of assert themselves as still being in that top and not really giving up on them yet. But again, they take advantage of a second period where they score 2 goals, big 2 by Anthony Pepe, both on the power play. And I think when you look at the score sheet overall and just looking at the game itself, I think the special teams battle is one that really stands out to me in the sense that East Islip took advantage of when they had those opportunities. Granted, St. Anthony scores on the power play themselves, but like you said, the open space helps in the factor of special teams in that matter. And, Pepe's 2 goals is the difference, one of them being the game winner early on in the second. And, that's how they've made their money so far this year, that second period. And, special teams are starting to come together for them, which is what they're going to need.
The second period was absolutely a major factor, and it was interesting to see that they were able to convert on the power play because it's not something that they've done a lot this year. They came in with 3 power play goals, and they scored twice, and that really put it away. But like I talked about, Brody Dixon made the saves that he needed to make. He did a really nice job of denying the Friars, but I don't know if they're just a little exhausted after winning 9 in a row and really having to kind of streak back from the slow start they had. It just looked like East Islip was kind of just controlling pace of play, and they never really got any significant chances. Even DeAndrea's goal was just hard work in front, not established presence, just a crash and a chip shot that kind of squeaks under Dixon's arm.
Right.
And it looked like that might spark them. It was late, but East Islip just does such a nice job of closing out games late. And they've also just been able to handle teams when they needed to. But like you said, they didn't win in their last 2. They got a point against Smithtown. So we talked about in our last episode a month ago, this stretch that was coming up for East Islip where they were going to play Kings Park, Smithtown, and St. Anthony's, and how this was really going to tell the tale of the East Islip season, and they did a nice job managing it.
Yeah, they get 3 out of 6 points there, big on them, and it kind of almost feels like, I don't know how you feel about it because you called the game, so you have a better sense of this. It kind of feels like East Islip won that game more than St. Anthony's lost it, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So I think it's good on them because, again, I think if Smithtown and East Islip meet in the playoffs, that'll be something. I truly believe if they play each other 10, I've said this saying with Smithtown, and I believe it's Kings Park. If they play each other 10 times, Kings Park will win 5, Smithtown wins 5. That's how even I think those teams are. I think the same could be said for Smithtown, East Islip in the sense that, you look down their statistics overall and how they've played each other this season, they're very identical in one another. So I think East Islip did a real solid job. They did what they needed to do, get the point against Smithtown, get a 2 points against a really strong Ice Friars squad. So, I think they've really said, we're legit this year. We're going for it. Those guys were on the bench last night having a grand old time. Their coaches dressed up real nice and everything. So they knew the importance of that game, too, going forward. And sitting in that sole possession at 3rd place spot, winning both games against the Friars. We get into January. If those 2 teams are within 2 points or a point of each other like they are right now, that'll mean a lot to them.
Oh, it absolutely means a lot because that's the difference in the semifinals if those two teams, or the finals rather, if those two teams meet. Yeah. That's home ice. And East Islip is certainly the target's higher than where they are right now. They want to move as far up as they can. They're currently 4 points out of first place with 5 to play. Kings Park sits 12-2-1, and both Smithtown and East Islip, oddly enough, are 10-3-2. Yeah. So they just continue to tie throughout the season. It's honestly unbelievable. Smithtown currently with the edge based on goals against. They've given up 10 less goals, but they've scored 7 less. But again, goals against is the tiebreaker after wins.
Right, yeah. And they're both very strong defensive teams. They're one of the league leaders in the goals against department. Doesn't surprise me one bit. And I mean, obviously the offense is going to come. You have contributors all up and down the lineup. Obviously the headliners being Trites, Petito, Anantra, Ivers, et cetera, but they each do their own unique style of play, and it shows in the standings at this point.
Yeah, it does. And that was a good way to kick off our doubleheader last night. And then we finished with another pretty good game. Sachem against Northport Huntington. Again, massive playoff implications. Sachem trying to move up further into that playoff conversation and get back to that top 4, a place they haven't been since earlier in this season, right before they lost their captain, Thomas Konkowski, for about a month and a half.
Yeah, they needed that one last night after falling to West Islip, having a 2-goal lead late. Granted, that game was so back and forth. You could argue that was one of the top games of the year, which we'll get into later on, as you see on the side column there. But they definitely needed that one last night. They needed to get those 2 points, get the confidence back up in the room after a heartbreaker against West Islip. So now they're just a point out over the Ice Friars, who they'd beaten earlier on this year. So, it's a big win for them. Northport's still trying to hang around in that bottom 2 teams to get into the playoffs right now. But, that was a big win for them to, kind of get the ice broken. And a big game by Nick Ciani in that one, too. He's going to be one that really needs to come up in the clutch in the playoff time if they want to make a really deep run. Obviously, Konkowski, Calbert, they're going to have a lot of defense on them as the season goes on and as we get into the playoffs. So it's those depth contributors who really need to step up and continue to score like they did last night. Even Michael Morrow, John Golden, other players for them as well. Yeah,
it's gonna be really intriguing for me, at least, to see what kind of adjustments they make on the defensive end, because now they don't play again until Sunday the 8th, the week after New Year's. So they get a little bit of a week off after playing their 16th game last night. So what kind of adjustments can Coach LaRochester make on the defensive end for this team? Because they've given up 80 goals already.
Yeah, most in the varsity division. And it was interesting, too. We saw on their prior game, not last night's game, that was the West Islip game. He had changed things up after the Ward Melville game. He had a couple of defensive changes where he put the young kids together, Alamia and Capice on defense, as opposed to, I believe that was Mascaro and Capice. So a little bit of changes there. And I think he knows and he understands that there has to be some sort of a change, whether it be just a spark or something that hasn't clicked yet. And I think that's what they're missing right there. Once they find those 1 or 2 pairings that can click and mesh together perfectly, I think there's no doubt in my mind that they'll be able to at least slow teams down, because obviously, regardless of which team they play in the postseason, they're going to have some sort of stud line out there that they're going to be help to just contain. They're not going to be able to stop. I would applaud them if they're able to do so, but I think the defense there is one for concern to this point. Obviously, with the 80 goals allowed, they still have stellar goaltenders, don't get me wrong. Scott Loeb, Alessandro Giulietti doing their thing in the back of the net for them, but it's a matter of finding that right combination, because there's still time left in the season. And like you said, the week off for them benefits them in the sense that they can work on things in practice with one another, get those guys more accustomed to playing with each other, as opposed to simply just, throwing guys out there and saying, do the best you can, essentially.
Yeah, no, they definitely need the game plan, because it'll be interesting. They're not going to have an easy matchup in that first playoff game.
No.
Right now, they'd play St. Anthony's. That's a game you have to play defense.
Yeah.
If you don't play defense, it's going to be a long night.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we saw East Islip played a lot of interesting defense, flying around, being physical. Again, I think they did a really nice job. And maybe I was shocked by the pond hockey style a little bit, but maybe that's just how it has to be played, because you just don't allow St. Anthony's to possess. And it's something that we've talked about. Their possession game is their defense. Right. They possess well, and they just don't allow teams to do anything against them. And it's why they have one of the top defenses in the league in terms of goals against. They've only allowed 37, which is the third best But it's interesting. They certainly have no lack of offense, but again, I don't know if it was just they're feeling it after a 2-month stretch of nonstop, hardcore hockey and just winning, and it takes a lot out of you to have to do that. Yeah. So we'll see. I still think this team is very lethal come playoff time.
Absolutely, and I think East Islip too. It's a little bit of a motivating factor knowing that you're going and you're saying, we could be that team to not only end their such of a long stretch of a winning streak, but to also know, heck, okay, we have the head-to-head matchup. We got that extra 2 points. There's a lot of motivating factors going into that game for East Islip, so I think that's one thing to consider as well. Granted, they have the Smithtown game, another tie, so that could, you know what I mean? Like, it's so close for them there that it's, there's a lot to go into it, and it might not be just the Friars who were tired, but I think you got to give credit where credit's due. Like you mentioned, East Islip won that game more than St. Anthony's did.
Yes. So back to the Sachem game. Their opponent in that game was the Northport Huntington Tigers, and I believe we have a fan question about them.
Yeah, we do. They were curious where they're going to end up this year. Let me just find it real quick. Yeah, we have where they're going to end up this year.
For me, where they're going to end up, I think their ceiling is the 6th seed at the most. I think Middle Country's playing good hockey. I believe they have a tough schedule to end the season. Middle Country. They do. So Middle Country has to play Smithtown, St. Anthony's. They have to play Northport, and then they have to play East Islip with Ward Melville games sandwiched in between.
Right.
So I think for Northport's sake, I think their roster takes them as far as they go.
I agree.
It's availability.
Yep.
The return of Angel Spinelli is massive.
Yeah.
But it's their roster. You didn't have Ryan Collins last night. You put Blake Belt on the defense, something that is not his primary position, but something he looks pretty comfortable doing. Yeah. But he's much more effective as a scorer. And it's availability. If Northport has their full roster present in the playoffs and they're playing Smithtown, I really like that game to be very close.
I agree. I think you've said it before in the past. Availability is the best of it. Whatever. Can you repeat that?
Availability is the best ability.
Thank you. That's the key for Northport going forward. They have the pieces there. I don't question that. I don't question who is the goal scorers are. I don't question the defense. I question whether or not you can be there in early February for that matchup, because I think if you are, quite honestly, I think that's a team who can absolutely steal a playoff game.
Absolutely.
They have the goaltending to do it. They went through it all last year. They have the defense. They have the goal. It's just a matter of getting there, getting those kids to buy in, which they've done when they're there, quite honestly, for the most part. Other than last night, you're missing Ryan Collins, who's a big piece for them, despite only being a freshman in this league. We've seen what he can do just being there. I think it was that Ward Melville game that you and I had commentated together, or maybe it was the Smithtown game. Even though they got blown out 8-0, he shows up. They double their shots on goal total in less than 5 minutes a time. So you see the impact that just one player has for them. And I think I truly believe if they match up against a Smithtown or an East Islip, maybe even a St. Anthony's. I don't know if I'll go that far just yet, but I think one of those 2 top 3 teams or whatever, they're ones for me that really intrigue me, is say, okay, maybe they are in the semifinals.
Yeah, I can definitely see it, and I think we'll talk more about this when we get to our playoff picture talk. But I definitely think out of the 4 teams, they're the most well-rounded and most equipped to take on one of the top 4.
I agree.
They have the goaltending, they have the defense. It really is just a question of, can a Gafanov play consistently? Because there's nights where he looks phenomenal and he goes out and scores 5 points, or there's nights like last night. I don't believe he had a point, but he's still noticeable. He's playing well. He just needs to create that space, and it's tough. In a game like that, they don't have that line depth that Kings Park has, that Smithtown has, that Sachem has, that St. Anthony's has. It was Billy Collins unassisted and Jake Giacoppi, who's been on fire.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Been one of the bright spots for this team, even though they're 5 games under 500. I believe at one point he was leading the entire league in power play goals. So he's one to watch for them as well. He fits right into their system, plays well. He understands their system, being one of the top go-getters for their junior varsity club last year. He's made this seamless transition into varsity this year. So he's one where you can complement those other guys like the Collins brothers, Agafanoff, and again, to your point for Agafanoff last night, no points, just I believe it was unsportsmanlike late in the third. So, and again, too, that's one where you want him on the ice as much as possible. The more that he's in the penalty box or not able to play is, one to ponder, really.
Yeah, it is, and that's going to be a big thing, is who can stay out of the penalty box, because it appears it's really tough for East Islip to stay out of the penalty box.
Yeah.
They've taken 200 penalty minutes. That's a lot.
That is.
Whereas West Islip's taken half. They've taken 100 penalty minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. It's like a Jekyll and Hyde act for Northport, who shows up on any given night. Their Hyde is much more rare than their Jekyll, but their Mr. Hyde is a very effective one, and a scary one. They're a very good team when fully healthy, fully in, and everyone's playing clicking together.
Absolutely. The last thing I'll touch on too with Northport is we saw something interesting last night. Sean Tittle played, quote unquote. We're gonna say quote unquote played, but I think he's one name to watch too as the season goes on. He's getting his game credits in, that way he can be eligible for the postseason. I mentioned long time ago that he was one of the names that stood out to me back at Nationals last year. I think if he can get healthy, get his game credits in, and as long as he's able to practice with the team, do his thing, and rehab properly, I think he's one name that could fit right in there for them, and really take that experience, and he'll be a ball of energy when he's able to get back out there for them.
Yeah, he's going to be a welcome presence. They need as many players as they can get back, just because they want to be able to preserve legs in games. We've seen teams with 8 players just get worn down, and it's not even a contest after the second period. It's just not fun.
No, not at all.
So it'll be very exciting to see them in the playoffs. They're one of the teams that I'm looking forward to watching and being able to call games for. But let's shift gears now to the top of the cream of the crop, the Kings Park Comac Knights, who have had an interesting 2 months. I guess they've played 2 games this month. But they won both. They're on a 5-game winning streak. And after losing back-to-back in early November, it kind of seems like they went into a lull after a massive win over Sachem, but then the sleeping giant kind of woke back up.
Yeah, definitely. We were kind of wondering how that was going to transpire after the 2 losses, because they go into that Ward Melville matchup, only come out 3-2, but obviously, a win's a win, and, you put the skid behind you a little bit there, and, here you go. You shut out Northport, who's not really an easy task every night, and then, strong win against East Islip, and then you take care of business against Connecticut on that Sunday matchup where you might have been missing a couple players here and there, but still you go out, do your job. That's what they do. And then Middle Country, another big win against them, another offensive outpouring, which we're used to seeing from them, quite honestly.
Yeah, we are. There's no lack of offense there. And there's certainly not going to be a lack of offense in the playoffs come playoff time.
No.
Out of any of these teams. And one team that's really started to pick it up offensively is Smithtown.
Yeah.
They have really started to find their stride over their last couple games. They won 3-1 over Connecticut Sayville in their last game on Wednesday. So that's a solid win for them against a gritty, chippy Connecticut Sayville team that evens the season series, and that's the last time that those 2 teams are going to play. It doesn't really have a profound impact on what it's going to look like in the finish, but what I am really interested in looking at is how Kings Park, Smithtown, and St. Anthony's really kind of control their own destiny towards the end of this season. And it gets really interesting because in January, Smithtown plays Kings Park on January 15th.
Okay. Yep.
And then Kings Park plays St. Anthony's on January 25th. And then the last day of the season, Wednesday, February 1st, Smithtown plays St. Anthony's.
Yeah.
So it's those 3 teams. Now, East Islip has a pretty easy strength of schedule. They don't play anybody that's ranked higher than them currently. I believe their toughest matchup remaining is Sachem in their last 5. But it's going to be really interesting because East Islip could, in theory, walk right up and take that top spot if these teams just beat up on each other.
Absolutely. It's a sheer possibility. And, for Smithtown's point, points in their last 4, so that they're finding their groove right now. And, Coach George had told us earlier back in the later stages of November that their team is finally getting healthy, and when they're at full strength, and of course we sound like broken records with this, but when any team is fully healthy, that's when they're playing their best hockey. And they come out after the St. Anthony's loss, and start Citron, he says to me, quote, "I need this win," Pavone comes in, gets some reps anyway, gets the next game against Northport. Regardless, he pitches a shutout. They're back to full strength and everything. So, I think these top 3 teams at the moment, actually 3 out of the top 4 not being East Islip, it's an interesting stretch here for them because the Bulls go into that final game against St. Anthony's, the rubber match game, as we like to call it. I believe it's a rubber match game. Yeah, it is. It's that rubber match game.
St. Anthony's is rubber match, yes. So not only will they be controlling their own destiny, the winner of that could be in contention for the 1 seed.
Yeah.
The winner of that could also stay out of the 4 seed. Like, these are all very big possibilities.
Absolutely. And the one thing that's curious to me, too, you mentioned that first game for Kings Park against Smithtown. It's a Sunday game. And we know what Sundays have brought this season. We see those, like, baseball, like, low football scores of, like, 9-7 or 8-5. It's something to watch for sure.
It's really interesting. And we've had a little tidbit that a certain somebody might not be there in that game. We're not going to say who, but there might be some a big absence, a presence not present in that game. So it'll be very interesting to see how that pans out because again, this is it's go time. Smithtown technically has that win over Kings Park Comac right now, so Kings Park Comac is going to kind of need that game. Smithtown plays Middle Country and West Islip, 2 teams that are in pretty good positions right now. As far as where their game's at, those are not pushover games. And then you have to go play that Kings Park Comac team, so it's going to be a grind for Smithtown if they want to get there, but if they get there, they've earned it.
Absolutely. And the Middle Country West Islip game, those are 2 teams that are pretty much fighting each other right now for that last playoff spot. So as the weeks go on, and as I think they get one more head-to-head, if I'm not mistaken, Middle Country, West Islip. Correct me if I'm...
No, they do not. It's Middle Country, Ward Melville.
Thank you. Yep.
Middle Country and West Islip have split, and that is how that will finish. So that's going to come down to wins and goals against, which we'll get to in a second, because I definitely do want to talk about how interesting that is going to unfold.
Right.
But what I'm looking at now that's really interesting that I'm noticing is Smithtown and Kings Park kind of have like the same schedule coming down the stretch.
Okay.
So we'll look at it like this. Kings Park beat East Islip. Smithtown tied them. Kings Park beat Connecticut-Sayville. Smithtown beat Connecticut-Sayville. Kings Park beat Middle Country. Smithtown plays Middle Country. Kings Park's next game is against West Islip. Smithtown plays West Islip after that. Kings Park plays Sachem. Smithtown plays Sachem after Kings Park. Then they obviously play each other. And then the Bulls finish up with St. Anthony's, and Kings Park finishes up with their last 2 games against St. Anthony's and Ward Melville. So it really is going to be like, who is it? Anything that you can do, I can do better. Right. Obviously, you can't win more than somebody else. Win's a win, and 2 points is 2 points. But if Kings Park drops a game against Sachem and Smithtown picks that game up, that's a difference right there.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a matter of which of those teams, if either of them are going to slip up and maybe drop a game or give a free point to like a St. Anthony's or something. If you could take those games in regulation, that's huge going forward because, like you mentioned before, we might be sitting here in a month from now, and both those teams might be separated by a singular point, or their head-to-head game might be the difference between the winner of that game ultimately is your outright regular season champion.
And it's so big because you want that home ice, even though it doesn't really seem that big. We've seen teams try to sneak changes all the time. Get players on the ice late, because they, coaches are realizing, we want, so and so on the ice because it makes a difference. You want certain players on the ice against certain players. You want the matchups. So to have that matchup, Smithtown to be able to put out a certain line against a Kings Park Comac when they're such a defensive-minded team. Obviously, it may not make the biggest difference because you trust a lot of your defensemen, but I'm sure that George Zarugian's going to want a certain player out against Mikey Brazel.
Oh, absolutely, he will. And just one quick last thing on Kings Park here. Out of their last 5 matchups, 3 out of the 5, they're considered the guest road team. And those 3 matchups, Sachem, Smithtown, Ice Friars.
Oof.
That's... Granted, they won't run into that problem in round 1 of the playoffs, obviously, but I think it's a good test for them, like mentally, and to get them into that that playoff mentality of, okay, this is what might happen in a 3-game finals series, or this might happen in a semifinals if we don't finish in the top 3 or top 4, whatever the case might be. I think it's a good test for them mentally to get into that right state of mind and kind of use this last month for them as a playoff tune-up, in all honesty.
No, it is. You gotta get right. it's not really who's the best team going into the playoffs. It's who's the hottest team and who can find their stride at the right time. So we'll shift gears now down to Middle Country and the West Islip battle. And like we've talked about, something that's really interesting to me about Middle Country is their goaltending. It's Kings Park, Smithtown. You run into a hot goaltender. There's nothing you can do.
No.
There's not really anything you can do. It's not like, maybe we'll give him another chance. Like, it's one game, win or go home. Obviously, we saw last year the only upset was the 5 seed over the 4 seed, Connecticut Sayville, who eventually went on to the finals. But I think this season just has such a different feel. There's not that much. There is a disparity between 1 and 8. But like I said, the hot goaltender, man, that's all it takes. And, the buzzer rings 3-2, you're down. Like, they're not going to give you 4 extra minutes like they did in the World Cup to try and come back. It's over. Yeah. You just, you weren't hot. It wasn't your day that day. And it's unfortunate, but it's a possibility.
Definitely. All 4 Middle Country wins this year have allowed 2 goals or less. And that right there, my opinion, I don't know how you feel, but I think you'll agree with me in this. That's how they're going to have to win a playoff game if they make it.
Yeah. They've scored 5 goals once, I believe.
I think so. I think you're right.
And they lost.
They lost in overtime. Yep.
They're not a high-scoring team. They're a good team. Yeah. They beat Connecticut Sayville 4-1. They're a good team. I like Middle Country a lot. I think they're gritty. They're tough. They play fundamentally sound to the most part. Yeah. But they just, telling it like it is, they don't have Mikey Brazel. They don't have Nicholas DeAndre. They don't have Peter Petito. They don't have Billy Collins. They don't have Michael Agafonov. They don't have Billy Prang. They don't have any of these top flight players, but they have a good team. They have good chemistry, and they keep it light. And their goaltenders are super solid, man. You put any of those goaltenders on any other team, and that team becomes instantly better.
Absolutely. And, one thing we were curious about when they had started the season, I think it was like 9 straight games at one point.
0-8 they started.
We wondered, and we said, what's their identity? Do they have an identity? Like, who's going to, take up the reins? Is it going to be a team collective effort? I think it's safe to say they found their identity. They know what kind of team they are. They know how to play now. They know how to win a game if they need to. You're going to rely a lot on your goaltender. You're going to get those, like you said, those gritty goals. You don't have that star player. And there's one team in Nassau who we'll touch on later on, but that's besides the point. You look at their roster and points for getters. They don't have that star player. They're going to send kids to the All-Star game, granted, but they don't have that one guy where he's miles apart. The coaches are not turning to the bench and say, okay, I want you to score all 3 goals in this game. No, it's every single kid. It's Hoffler, O'Brien, Schuerman, Quinones has had big goals. Asmund's had some goals. It's a whole collective effort, and that's something to watch in the playoffs, quite honestly, because if you're able to slow down those star players on those other teams, all those other kids on the team might not be used to picking up the offensive slack where they've not necessarily riding the tailcoats to the other players, but they're not used to, stepping up and being that contributor where teams are going to need going forward.
Yeah. No, they play as a collective team, definitely. And another team that plays collectively is West Islip. So it's going to be a real interesting battle down the road. Yeah. They both have very similar schedules. I'm just looking to see what the difference is here. It's Kings Park. Yeah. So, currently as it sits, it's Middle Country is a point up on West Islip. They've both played 15 games. 4-11 for Middle Country, 4-10-1 for West Islip. They have very similar schedules coming down the stretch. They both play Northport. They both play Ward Melville. They both have to play St. Anthony's. They both have to play Smithtown. The difference is that Middle Country has to play East Islip and West Islip has to play Kings Park. The real difference is that Kings Park is the first game after the break for West Islip, and East Islip is the last game of the season for Middle Country. Who are you taking to pick up that last playoff spot?
Between Middle Country and West Islip?
Yes.
It's tough, man. It's tough. I mean, like you said, they both play very similar. I think West Islip is feeling confident about themselves after that win on, what was that, Monday, right? Yep. I think they're feeling a lot more confident about themselves. But I think, like you said, if a goaltender can steal you a game, that's huge. And I think I'm leaning towards the Cougars only because of their goaltending. And the reason why I say that, too, is look at their games the whole season. Those goalies are used to those 30 to 45, even sometimes 50 shots a game. I'm not saying West Islip hasn't, but I think the way Middle Country has won those games, they know what they can and can't get away with and how to come back in those games. They're down a little bit or who to turn to. Like you said, I'm picking Middle Country, I think, right now.
Is the difference for you the Ward Melville game or the Northport game?
For middle, what do you mean? Is a sense
deciding that playoff spot. So they both play Ward Melville and Northport back to back.
Right.
And it's the same off stretch. So Middle Country plays Ward Melville Wednesday, January 18th, and then they turn around and play Northport Sunday, January 22nd. Yep. What's really interesting is we've seen Northport on Sundays. They don't have a lot of players a lot of the time.
Nope.
West Islip plays Ward Melville on a Wednesday, January 25th, and then they close out their season Monday, January 30th against Northport. So is that 2-game stretch what you could view as the difference? Because both of them play 3 top 4 teams. Yeah. And just by the look of it, obviously anything can happen. It's hockey, it's sports, they can steal games, but in reality, let's be realistic for a second. Is Ward Melville, Northport, that 2-game stretch, whoever wins those 2 games or has the better 2-game stretch, is that your playoff contender?
Yep. That's it, 100%. Because, again, like you said, I think a big thing to note, like you mentioned, we've seen Northport on Sundays. It's not pretty, in all honesty. And it's for an attendance standpoint. It's not pretty as far as who they have, who's available in their roster. If legend holds true, I think Middle Country has the edge there. But in the sense where if Middle Country drops one of those 2 games in regulation, then I think it's West Islip's to lose that playoff spot. Yeah. I think Ward Melville is too far out of it at this point to have a serious run at it, because their schedule is not the greatest either. Like they have to go up against West Islip and Middle Country, but they go up against three out of their next 5 are playoff teams. Like you have to steal a win in one of those games.
Yeah,
there's no way fans are buts.
It's really interesting, honestly, when you look at it with Ward Melville, the way that they've played. It's kind of strange. Like you think they figured it out, and then they kind of revert a little bit. But it's like, can you take the Connecticut Sayville game, and then can you beat Middle Country and West Islip? Because then that's 6 points. Yeah. And if Middle Country and West Islip don't win, you vaulted into the playoffs over them by a point, and then you have Kings Park to end the season.
Right.
Which you played them really close.
Yeah. But can you do it again? That's what I'm wondering about. I don't want to say, is that 3-2 score a fluke?
They lost to them 5-2 their second game of the season.
Yeah.
So like they're down, and like I've said, they've really needed to pick up some games that they just really couldn't pull out. That Northport game was tough because you lost Vertenisic to a skate issue. It was 3-0 at the time that he left, so who's to say that it would have changed the momentum if he'd stayed in? But it's tough. They're not out of the conversation, but they're gonna need to make it happen.
They need help too.
They do need a lot.
That's
of help.
one thing that's one thing why I'm not gonna write them off just yet, because again, we were pretty much writing off Middle Country, and look where that turned out. So, I think again we've said this saying a lot too. I think time's running out on them. Time's running out more than ever on them. So
we're in the last quarter of the season.
Yeah.
There's no Middle Country had 8 games to figure it out, and then they figured it out, and they've won 4 of their next 7.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Like you don't have 7 games.
No.
You got 5 games. You have to win a majority of them. You have to win. You have to win at least 3. Otherwise, you're not in.
Yeah.
Because you have lost to Middle Country, and you're going to play them again, but you're already at least a split in that season series. West Islip, you have, what did they do their second game? 1, so that's a rubber match, which I did want to talk about. That'll be really interesting. So that rubber match comes Wednesday, January 25th, and then Connecticut Sayville, you're too far out of reach for them. But like again, that's a team where that's an interesting team to me, and I want to talk about them in a second, because that team intrigues me on a couple different levels. But yeah, I don't know. The bottom of the standings is going to be really intriguing as far as the playoff pushes, because we have 4-5 teams clinched right now. And then it's just like, who can make that next stand of a push?
Yeah.
It's the late season pushes, and it's, you get a week off to kind of regroup, figure it out, and then it's all systems go, and it's desperation mode. So will we see Northport? Will we see Ward Melville come out with a little bit of a different play style? Maybe play more aggressively, realize that they need to play with a little more desperation, and go for it. And if they don't get it, then they don't get it. It was never theirs to have anyway. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think they have to. I think the way you have to look at it for them is like, what do you have to lose other than just being in the same position that you are now? Their first game against East Hyslop is one that intrigues me because their first matchup they played them, the score they lose 7-0, but I don't think that's truly telling of how that game went. They had some chances in that game, and I believe that was McGovern who made a lot of nice saves, especially in that second period, and it was only 2-0 after the first anyway. So I think it definitely starts with that game, and I think that's one where you say, if you can get a point out of that game, then oh boy, I think you have to reassess here, the two of us, and it's like, can they legitimately take a point in that game, win in regulation against West Islip and Middle Country, because like you said, they're split with West Islip right now. You got to win that in regulation.
You can't afford to take either of those games into overtime because as soon as they get a point, you're done.
Yeah, and the reason, and quite honestly, that's why they're in the position now, because of the Middle Country loss in overtime. If you win that game in regulation, you hold on, you win 1-0, the standings look a little different right now.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still towards the bottom. They're not in a playoff position right now, but still in all, like, it's a lot closer than it is right now.
Yeah, they're definitely not totally out of it.
No.
But like we said, the clock's ticking. So now we'll move back to the middle of the standings. Connecticut, Sayville, and Northport are now separated by a point.
Right.
After Northport took that victory against Ward Melville, and then they lost to Sachem last night. They had a chance to leapfrog Connecticut, Sayville, but Connecticut now leads them by a point, still 13-12. Yeah. And Connecticut has a game in hand, albeit that game is against St. Anthony's.
Right. Yeah. Tough stretch for them there. It's not going to be easy to hold Northport off. Northport's going to, you know what I mean? Like you said, Angel coming back is huge for them. It's a boost for not just their whole team, for their goaltending, but the locker room itself. So, I think Connecticut is an intriguing one. Like you said, it's a tough stretch. Welcome back. You welcome back. Welcome to 2023. Your reward, you get the Ice Friars.
Yeah.
Like that's not easy. And then you get Konkowski and company 4 days later. So it's interesting. And that 23rd game is interesting because, if Northport takes that in regulation, your new 5 seed is, or 6 seed, excuse me, right? Yep, 6 seed. Your new 6 seed is the Northport Huntington Tigers.
Connecticut ends their season very early. January 23rd, they're done.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Wow. Yeah, it's interesting because that also could determine, like, playoff positioning. And then Middle Country. West Islip, third time. Northport plays West Islip to end their season after they play Connecticut Sayville. So you could go in, if Northport wins that game and maybe they're down a point, they could go into the West Islip game knowing that all they need to get is a point or two, and they can move up. And that can determine playoff positioning.
Of course.
But, yeah, we're going to have Connecticut Sayville taking on East Islip on the 18th of January for a potential playoff preview. And like I said, I wanted to touch on with Connecticut Sayville. They're an interesting team where, like, East Islip, Northport, Sachem, these teams play stretch pass, breakaway hockey. They want to go. They want to play with speed. They want to play with getting their scores out in front. They feel like they thrive off of, trying to hit home runs. Whereas Connecticut Sayville is going to try to single you to death.
Yeah.
They don't take unnecessary chances. They don't take unnecessary risks. They play smart, fundamental hockey. They rely on their goaltending.
Yep. And
their defense is led by their captain, Matteo Marchese.
Right.
So it'll be interesting because sometimes it comes back to burn them where they just aren't aggressive enough. And, in spots that they may need to be.
Right.
So, they've had a long time off. They haven't played since December 14th, so I'm sure that they've been practicing, and they won't play again until January 4th. But it turns into they're another team where attendance is crucial because you need your Campanolas and your Fly Showers and your Mercados and your Tom 40s and your Keels. But it's, can you come up with an aggressive play style that will work against St. Anthony's and East Islip, because we saw how East Islip had to handle St. Anthony's last night with keeping it moving, playing back and forth. And I just don't think that Connecticut knows how to play that style yet. But again, if they turn it around and start playing like that, then maybe they have a better chance against St. Anthony's.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the physicality standpoint which they kind of lack this season, because the JV, a lot of their kids this year came up from JV, and I think that's what hurt them in that junior varsity game, in the sense that, you know, they had beaten, for context, they had beaten St. Anthony's Gold earlier on in the regular season last year. They go into the playoff game, the intensity's higher, things of that nature, and they end up falling. So I think that's one to ponder too. Currently, they're I think the lowest in the division right now as far as penalty minutes go.
They are.
I think they're the only team with less than 100 penalty minutes.
No, I don't believe. Smithtown has 98.
Okay, all right. Yeah, they're still towards the lower.
Technically speaking, they're not, but
right,
they are.
Right. So yeah, no, I think that's one of curiosity. A lot of their game plan now comes on, you know, taking advantage of the mistakes from their opponent. So I think it's one where January is another one for them, where they can use that as a tune-up for the playoffs. Can you try and change around your style, kind of throw teams off and say, you know, some lines might not be as aggressive as others, but you got to have that line where it's like, okay, can we be a little more physical in the corners? Not to the point where we're roughhousing and taking roughing penalty every 4 minutes of the game, because that's surely not going to help your chance. But,
no.
You know, just that sense of, like, urgency and that physical play, which you're going to need in the playoffs. The absolute importance here is that, you know, you're ready for that February hockey, and it doesn't come as a shock to you, because if you continue to play the way that you are and you don't kind of like give in to the style of play that comes with the postseason, and we see it in the NHL too, and how much more physical action, hard-hitting action there is. You got to be in that right frame of mindset in order to make things work, and, you know, potentially give a higher team a run for their money.
Yeah, you do. And they have to. I feel like they have to feel good with where they're at right now. Like, they haven't played bad.
No.
They're good. But like I said, they just need to come up with a little. They need to stay smart. They're a smart hockey team, like you said, and it shows in the penalty minutes. They know what they're doing out there. They know not to take unnecessary risks, and it might also come with the lack of physicality, like we touched on. They're just not, you know, they're not the East Islips of the world, where they'll come out there and they'll just beat you to death. But I think they are going to have to step up a little bit on the aggressive side, because they're going to need to start scoring.
Agreed. Yeah.
They need to start scoring. They have currently
53 and 15.
3. Okay, so it's not terrible. But, like, you're above everyone below you, but you're like 20 back of everyone above you. That's the problem. They need to score. Yeah. They don't give up a lot of goals. They've given up 66, which for where they are is not bad. Sacham's given up 80. Northport's given up 69. And then those top 4 teams are just a different breed of unreality. Yeah. They've given up no more than 40. Right. So they have the talent. The talent is there, no doubt about it. So it's attendance and it's the aggressive play style. Like, you know, like can you swing for like doubles and triples, get extra. You don't have to hit the stretch pass home runs. Because I just don't think that they're not capable, but that's just not who they are.
Right.
But you have to be able to make moves when you need to. Like, you need to know when the time to go is.
Exactly.
Because right now they're lined up against East Islip, and East Islip will run. They'll run and they'll be comfortable, and you know they'll just try to bludgeon you to death. Yeah. So if they drop to the 7th seed, I don't think they have to panic. They've played Smithtown well.
Yeah.
They had a tough loss to open the season against East Islip, and then they beat them 3-2. Again, Sunday, so who knows what that was. Yeah. But then we get, like I said, that playoff preview possibly with the rubber match of their season, January 18th. They take on East Islip again, and that's a Wednesday. So there should be pretty full attendance. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out, and if Connecticut really can hang, and if they've changed their style, and we'll find that out when we come out of the break.
Yeah, I think it's funny you mentioned how they're matched up with East Islip right now, and like you said, they're a run and gun kind of team, and I think if that were a playoff matchup, I think you have to kind of change your outlook and how you play, because if you don't, like, it's very hard to capitalize on East Islip if and when they make a mistake. I think there's other teams where they've been able to do so, i.e. Smithtown earlier on in the year. But I think if you go up against an East Islip or even a St. Anthony's in the first round, there's things that you might have to change about your game. Might not necessarily in the game, but I think leading up to that game, you have to have a little bit of a different mindset as to the differences of how you played earlier on in the year.
Mm-hmm. I think everyone's going to have to make adjustments because teams are starting to learn and adapt to what everyone's doing. We've seen the teams make adjustments. Nobody has come in playing the same style. I feel like I said, East Islip's defense has softened up a little bit. St. Anthony's has turned their season around. SCHSHL had to, for a while, adapt their play style because they didn't have Konkowski. So it's about who can make the adjustments. And like everyone's going to have played everyone at least twice. So can you learn from what happened in those two games, and can you apply it to a one-game playoff? As it currently sits, what to you is the most intriguing playoff matchup?
At this moment, right?
The current 8 that it sits at. Not trying to predict like if one team will get in, and one team will, just like as it sits 1 through 8, who's the most intriguing playoff matchup?
I think that 4-5 is really interesting to me because like we said, SCHSHL took them down earlier on in the year where St. Anthony's was kind of in their little rut, and then obviously SCHSHL falls casualty to them as part of one of their 9-game win streak. I think those two teams have the offensive firepower. I think that's one where we'll get into this very shortly as far as game of the year goes, but I think those two really excite me as far as that's one where you're going to see the constant back and forth, the nonstop action. Despite it being a playoff game, I'd be very shocked if that were like a 2-1. Like if everything stays the way it is and they do meet in round 1, I'd be really shocked for that to be like a 2-1 playoff game. I cannot see that happening.
Yeah, that's not SCHSHL's identity.
No.
It's neither team's. More so the Friars.
Right.
But yeah, no, they're both big scoring teams.
Definitely.
So yeah, now that we've gotten that, we'll talk about possible game of the year candidates. So we have a couple to choose from.
Right.
First being what we build as what could be the game of the year. We're going to be getting the rematch this coming month. Smithtown Kings Park. That game ranks high in terms of storyline coming in, crosstown rivals battling for the top of the division. Almost a battle of the undefeateds. We got really close. We didn't. And then, just the energy in the building. It was packed. The way that Kings Park took the lead in that game, just a lot of unbelievable stuff.
Definitely, and I think the one item that made that game really unique in its sense compared to the other games that we've had this year is those fans. And anytime those two teams get together, or even like a Smithtown St. Anthony's, the fans on both sides come out in full force, and that's what makes it so special. Is like we get it we get it in the playoffs, especially, which we're used to because of that's the highest level of competition. But I think it's those regular season games that make it special. And it's really something where that rematch being on a Sunday, a weekend game, you might see they might have to like charge at the door or something. That how exciting that would be for more people to come out for that.
Yeah, no, it would be. So it's very exciting. Hopefully Sunday will be good. That Sunday in January when they meet, I hope it's packed again. But like you said, we'll get the playoffs, and the playoffs should be jumping. Cannot wait to have that atmosphere back.
Definitely.
Second game I'll bring to your attention is a game that we actually had this week, back on Monday. West Islip beats SCHSHL in overtime.
Oh yeah, that was like a boxing match. I think either you or me or both of us said that multiple times on the broadcast Monday night, and that was one where West Islip was kind of playing for their season in a sense. So like they knew how important it was, and you could tell the kids like they didn't quit on themselves being down 2 goals. And SCHSHL I believe was down at one point in that game. I don't know if they were down 2 or not.
SCHSHL started down 2-0.
Yeah. So you knew that West Islip was going to set the tone in some way, shape, or form. They do so, and it was really fun to watch. And it was just something where that's one for me. If you're West Islip, you circle that one and you say, this changes our season, essentially.
It does.
This changes our season. This changes our confidence in the room. And, this is one where we go into this last month and, even though 4-10-1 isn't the greatest, I think you have to look at that game as your turning point.
You do, because it's the difference between being a point out of a playoff spot and making January really interesting, and being 3 points out and having to play January with a lot of desperation.
Yeah.
So, no, really good game. A lot of back and forth action. High scoring, which for a hockey game is interesting because sometimes those high scoring games just aren't good. Sometimes they're just sloppy. A lot of bad goals. There wasn't a bad goal, so to speak, in that game. It was a really well played hockey game. A lot of good back and forth action.
Yeah.
A lot of fun to be a part of. And then another game that was a ton of fun to be a part of, which our third candidate of the year is Smithtown East Islip Game 2, the tie that ended 5-5.
Right, yeah, that was one where East Islip was doing their best they can to tie this one up, and then both teams, I believe it was scored 3 in the third in that one. That was that was something else. EI never led in that game; it was all Smithtown, and then instead of the infamous second period that we're so used to with East Islip, even though they scored both goals in the second period, they come out in the third and they say, let's score 3 goals in less than 5 minutes. And what a finish that was. And, it's unfortunate we haven't gotten a winner against them in either game yet. So that's why I'm curious if they meet in the semis or even the county final. Like, how crazy would that be? Like, they might run out of time for the ice slot in that one.
Well, we'll just move to a shootout, which is a little bit of a crime.
Right.
But there will be winners in the playoffs, rest assured. And then I'll throw out a final one.
Okay.
This one came way back early in the season, so let's see how good your memory is on this one.
Can I guess it first?
Go ahead.
Kings Park, Northport 6-6.
On the head, you
There we
hit
go.
it.
Nice.
Thoughts?
That was another one where Northport was down early, and I think it was early, if I'm not mistaken. That was they were down early in that one, and then I think Gaffinoff and Belt had 2 each, if I'm not mistaken. That was a crazy one. Yeah, that was one. I filmed that one. I was next to you the whole time, and I looked over at you. I think it was 5-3 at one point, and then I looked over at you. I was like, what do we got here?
Let's see. It was 1-0 Northport, and then it was 2-1 Kings Park after 1. And then it was 2-2 after a Belt goal, and then 4-2, and then 5-3, and then we were tied at 5 after the second period.
That's
after
nuts.
Blake Belt and Michael Agafonov both had 2-goal periods.
That was the infamous Jesse Lemza game for you.
It was the Jesse Lemza game for me. It was a proud moment in my short announcing career.
No, that's another one right there where it's like, we're so used to these games as of late, but that's one where I think that's got to be at least second best for me besides the West Islip game. And the common theme with all these is that they're all high scoring games. So I don't foresee that happening in early February when the postseason comes around, but it's just one where everyone's kind of like screaming their heads off, looking at each other, and it's like we're having fun right now.
Yeah. Oh, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to be in that atmosphere.
Yeah.
So how would you rank those 4 games? What would be your top game of the year so far?
So
far, because we still have 5 games from each team to play, and the playoffs, which we're expecting to bring absolute just reigns of madness.
Right. Okay. So I'm gonna go with the West Islip Station game at 1 because I think the magnitude of that game for one team is something to not overlook.
It's very interesting.
I think I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go Kings Park, Northport at 2.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with that at 2.
Wow.
Yeah, and then it was the Smithtown East.
You have
Islip.
Smithtown KPC and Smithtown East Islip.
Okay, so Smithtown Kings Park 3, and then Smithtown EI 4. That's my top 4.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
I like that. It's funny because for as long as I've been playing hockey, I'm a goalie, and you would think I'm a sucker for the low-scoring games, but it's the exact opposite. I love the high-scoring energy. I love the atmosphere. And again, like, it's ironic for me to say because, just before I said Smithtown Kings Park, the fans made that so special, but I don't know. It's something about that West Islip Sachem game that really stands out to me in the sense that
it was really good. It was really back and forth. So look at it a little more. It was insane. It wasn't expected. Aiden Conti bats one out of the air.
Yep.
Like a baseball player. near and dear to my heart. And then 6 minutes later, Brendan Pollard, the unexpected of the Pollards, his second goal of the season. He just crashes the net, pokes it home. But then 20 seconds later, Thomas Konkowski does his thing, scores. And then 3 minutes later, Nicholas Siani, your fan favorite now, ties it.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, this is really interesting. And you didn't really know what to expect out of West Islip at that point because they got off to a really hot start. And we talked about them needing to pick up the offense. Yeah. They didn't have a lot of offense coming into this game. And then when Gregory Monty scored in the second period to open it, to give Sachem a 3-2 lead, we were like, all right, is this it? Like, is Sachem going to just start running away with this? Or what are we going to get here? But 2 power play goals in the span of 12 seconds, Liam Henshaw and Alex Potato sent West Islip into a frenzy.
That'll do it to you, yeah. And, we wondered how much offensive depth this Lions team can have. And like we both said, they look like when they're firing all cylinders clicking, they look like a scary team. They look like a scary bunch when they have everyone chipping in. It's not, like I said on Monday's broadcast, it wasn't just, granted, of course, Kieran Pollard has 3 goals, so he does his own thing, but it wasn't the Kieran Pollard show in the sense that he scored 6 out of the 8 and finished with 6 points. It wasn't just that. You have your William Shields, you have your Thomas Miller.
He finished with 5. It was close.
But regardless, the point still stands that it's not just him anymore. You have goals that aren't solely based upon him. You have those nice plays where you shoot low pad for that rebound, and you have Brendan Pollard crash in the net, or you have Alex Potato at the point.
Well, that second period was the Alex Potato Liam Henshaw show.
Yeah,
those two guys were setting each other up left and right. That power play stretch was electric.
Definitely was. I think there was 4. I don't mean to cut you off here, but I think there was 4 separate lead changes in that game. 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5. I think 5. If I'm not mistaken.
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 5.
That's why it's number 1 for me.
Yeah, that went back and forth. It was a really good one, and it's one of my favorite games of the season because it just was unexpected too. West Islip's good. They're not a bad team, but you didn't expect them to be coming into this game into a slugfest. And like we talked about, it's really weird. Like the last time St. Anthony's lost to East Islip, or lost a game, was to East Islip. They lose again. The last time that West Islip went on a little bit of an offensive stretch, they played Sachem. Yeah. They come back. They play Sachem. It's really strange. Yeah. But it's fun. It's fun to unpack, and it's fun to see.
And it's like I said to you in that game, too, in the third period, when West Islip was out-shooting Sachem by double. I think it was 30-15 at one point. Did we expect that going in?
Nope.
Hell no.
No.
And that's why it's number 1 for me.
Yeah. No, look, I'm not taking anything away from you. I appreciate it. Appreciate your honesty. Maybe we'll throw that up and see what everybody else thinks on the gram. We'll have a little poll. Yeah. Pass some time over the holiday break.
Definitely.
And through the All-Star game, so we could have some fun with some stuff.
All right, awesome.
So we'll switch gears now a little bit. We'll move over to the other side of Long Island. Another county, Nassau County, is approaching or is right around the halfway point in their season. Some teams have played a little less, some teams have played a little more, but we're really starting to get kind of a shaped up picture of who's in contention, who's not, and who's going to be in the future. But we have some questions about Nassau.
We do have some questions about Nassau, and one of them that really sticks out to me is your most underrated Nassau team this year. So I'm going to take it right away, and it's ironic because the individual who asked this question plays on Garden City, and that's my answer so far. I think they got a really strong all-around team. They have a really solid goalie in PJ Tercey. Shout out to him, the unofficial Connecticut Sable T-Birds general manager. They got a really strong group. I think that's Alex Bedard on that team as well. He's playing a high level of travel for Junior Islanders 16U. Bobby Siemens, another one who has had a real good start to the year for them. So I think that's one that they go in there and not only beat the defending champion Massapequa Chiefs, but they shut them out.
Yeah, I really like that defensive combination they have of Blum and Cool. But PJ Tercey has also become one of my favorite goaltenders on the island. Shout out to him if you're watching. Maybe we'll send them this. No, but they do have a pretty good team. They're pretty well rounded. And their captain Thomas Walker is another really good player, defenseman, but is not afraid to go skating with the puck.
No, one thing that stands out to me too for Garden City, they only lose to Roslyn 4-0, and I think Franks just had one. Yeah, Franks had just the one goal in that game, and if you're holding Ryan Franks, one of the best players on the island, quite honestly, to one goal, that deserves a gold medal in itself, in my opinion.
Yeah, and they're currently 2 points out of a playoff spot behind Massapequa with a game in hand.
Yep.
And obviously we're halfway through the season, so a lot to still figure out. Excuse me. As far as shaping up that playoff race.
Right.
Let's take a look at their game schedule now. Who they have coming up? Their game in hand is Long Beach.
Tough one.
Long Beach. So yeah, definitely not easy.
Yeah.
And then they play Wantagh Seaford Plain Edge. Should win that game. Yeah. Belmore Merrick, tough game. Friends is an interesting game because that's a chippy bunch of players there. They're very short rostered, but they can come out and they can steal games from you. They have a bunch of good players. Will Bystrom and Edward Kenny.
Clark Beard, good no goal for them too.
He's a very good goalie. Then they play Port Washington, another game that could be interesting. Maybe a good winnable game for Garden City. Then they play Half Hollow Hills, who's having a phenomenal season, 8-2 currently. And then they play somebody that really intrigues me, and I know somebody that really intrigues you, Valley Stream Lynbrook Sawanica.
Yeah.
And then they finish with Farmingdale on February 1st.
Right.
So yeah, their path is cut out for them. There's definitely a lot of winnable games. There's games that they can steal. And for Massapequa, who is now currently the holder of the 8th seed, the defending champions.
They still got to play Long Beach, I think.
They play Roslyn coming out of their little mini holiday break. Then Manhasset, Great Neck, Wantagh, Seaford, Plain Edge, Friends, Long Beach, Syosset, Belmore Merrick, and Valley Stream. So Massapequa has a very tough stretch to the back half of their season. And if they want to win, they're going to have to earn it if they want to repeat. Because Garden City, absolutely, like you said, is underrated. They have the talent. They have the scoring. They have the goaltending. They can come in and they can move up a couple playoff spots, I believe. Yeah. I wouldn't discount them out of that.
No, definitely not. And that head-to-head against Massapequa. With Nassau, it's interesting because there's such a higher amount of teams. I think it's 17 total, where they only play each other just the one time. We're used to it in Suffolk. It's 2 and sometimes 3. It's one time. That's it. You're done for the season. So the head-to-head speaks even more volume in that game in particular.
Yes.
So that's one where you say, okay, could that be the game that, quite honestly, changes our season? Because you look at 9 and 10 right now, Garden City and Cold Spring Harbor. That's a 4-point separation right there. And and they still have the game in hand at Cold Spring Harbor too. So that's something where,
Yeah, they can really kind of start closing it off. We'll see. We've seen stretches where like Middle Country went on a run over a 7-game stretch after not having a great start to their season, but it'll be interesting because it's a very physical style of play out there. In Nassau, it's kind of rugged like the Wild West. Which, oddly enough, it is the western part of Long Island. But for me, I think my underrated team, and I know you're going to love this pick, has to be Valley Stream Lynbrook Sawanica, who I made mention of before. We came in not really understanding what the expectations were going to be for this team, and they've come out of the gates firing. They're 7-2.
Yeah, and I'll go on the record here and give my sincere apologies to the Storm faithful. Because
It's your turn.
Earlier on in the season, I was quite down on them. I think Nassau had ranked them about 8th or 9th, and I didn't agree with it.
The Nassau page has apologized for not giving them. They're like the T-Birds. They have to apologize for not giving them their due respect.
Right. Yeah. So going into the season, even I did not think they were a playoff team going in. So they've definitely caught my eye and caught my attention. And you know what it is too with them is that a lot of these teams in Nassau, similar to Suffolk, have these star-studded players, and you have that 1 or 2 guys. Again, Heiss and Marone are top 2 for them in scoring, but I think all except maybe 1 or 2 kids on that roster have a goal this year. Like, they're one of the most complete, sound teams in that county. Again, Syosset, Bethpage, on a different level as far as where they are standings wise. But I think the way all those kids go out there, they trust one another, they're able to just convert on opportunities. I think they're one of the most complete and well put together groups of kids out there. Both their goalies, Mungan and Siegel, terrific young men right there. They're gonna be a team to watch long term. Like it would not surprise me if we go into February here and they're one of the final 4 teams, or even quite honestly one of the final teams. That won't surprise me.
I could see it. They're gonna make a run. They're pretty much in the playoffs at this point. Like if they just keep playing the way that they've been playing, they win games pretty handedly.
Yeah.
The only 2 games they've lost are against Syosset and Bethpage, 2 of the more undoubted top teams in the league. But coming down the stretch on the back half of their season, they only play 3 teams that are currently over 500. 2 of them are in the playoffs.
Right.
And they're in the bottom half of the playoffs. It's Roslyn, it's Massapequa, and that third team is Garden City, who's currently in the 9th seed. So all they have to do is just continue to do what they've done. They've given up, let's see, 1, 2, 1, 1, 4. The most they've given up in a victory is 4. So they play really strong defense, and they have really strong goaltending. You're going up against, like, Levittown, Hicksville, East Meadow, a team that I do like. I really do enjoy watching them. They have a nice team. But for Valley Stream, all you have to do is just continue to play the way that you've played, and you'll have no problems going into the playoffs, and you can hopefully tune up and get ready to roll. And then you'll be clicking on all cylinders and be able to make a run. But just to turn to Levittown, Hicksville, East Meadow, I really am a fan of Michael Dawson's game.
Oh yeah.
He gives me Ryan Franks vibes in the terms of size and his skating ability. Watching him that first game, I think it was opening night for us on the LI Sports Network of the New York Islanders High School Hockey League. I didn't really know what to expect because I'm not so well versed in the Nassau hockey scene, more so Suffolk. But I'm learning, and I'm trying to learn and get better and pick up as much as I can. Their goaltenders were impressive too because they're 2 freshmen, very young players. So this is a team that intrigues me down the road in the future because I think in 2 to 3 years they'll be very good.
I agree.
And they have very good young talent. That being also Michael Dawson.
Yeah.
Michael Dawson is a defenseman who is a very tall defenseman. I don't know his height exactly, but it was very impressive to watch him skate and handle the puck. He looked like a centerman out there. But, he's backing the defense.
Definitely. They're going through a little bit of growing pains now, which we kind of expected going into the year. But this is kind of like a learning year for them. You kind of figure how the league operates, what you got to do to win, be successful. And they have other pieces there, too. Donovan Butler, Owen Hickey, some of their top scorers that, are leading them in that department. And they get their first win, I believe it was a week ago, against Port Washington. And that's got to feel great for them going into the rest of the season. And, using that game to build off of will be interesting to see.
Yeah, it will, because it's all about moral building blocks at this point, getting ready for next season and the season after that, and really starting to establish yourself as a hockey program because they're a new hockey program, and they're in this league, and it's one of the toughest leagues around. There's a lot of really good talent, a lot of really good teams, a lot of physical play. So it'll be interesting to see them years down the line, but I'm putting a lot of stock into them. I think they're gonna have bright futures.
Absolutely.
But I mean, this playoff picture is shaping up to be pretty good. Syosset's still undefeated. They're currently 9-0. They played that game against Bethpage, which we were there for.
Oh, we were.
Ooh, that was a great game.
Yeah.
Didn't look like it was gonna be a great game to start. The game ended 5-4.
Was it like 4-0 at one point?
It was, let's review, 3-0.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
I believe it was 3-0. It was. Yeah. And we were like, this stinks, you're expecting such a good game. And what really kind of stunk was Marco Lizica was not there.
No.
He was not there. But then he was there. And it all changed.
It was almost as if I've said it to you probably 100 times, and I'll say it 100 times more. It was like the Pope walked into the building when that man walked in. If you go back and you listen to our game, you could hear the fans screaming when he walked in. This is when Bethpage has an offensive zone draw. They win the faceoff. They score 10 seconds later. That place goes nuts. We both looked at each other. We were like, uh-oh, here it comes. And wouldn't you know it, we were 4-3 going into the third period, and we said, how the hell is this game going to finish? We had no idea.
It finished, it did. They got it to within a goal. Liziga picked up 2 assists in the game. But yeah, just being there, you could just sense it because, taking in that game, really trying to adapt to the Bethpage rink, the Town of Oyster Bay rink, the style, the calling, just making sure everything's running accordingly. It's kind of hard to see down the ice, so you can see down, but down the boards it's kind of tough. And you kind of heard a rise come from, as you said, the fans and the players on the bench, and they stood up, and I was like, did something happen on the ice that I missed? Because sometimes I'm checking the scoreboard, making sure everything's going right, and maybe I missed something. And sure enough, you kind of gave me a, and you're like, he's here. And I'm like, oh boy, this is going to be interesting. And then, like you said, 30 seconds later, Stavros Lykorensis is finding the back of the net to make it 3-1, and it felt like the game was tied.
Oh, definitely. The momentum was there, and what the home kids call it there, the power plant. So it's it definitely, trust me when I say this, when Bethpage plays at the Town of Oyster Bay Ice Skating Center, it's a home game. Don't kid yourself on that one. It's like when Long Beach plays down at the Emile Francis Ice Arena now. It's a home game. Don't get it twisted.
No, it is. These teams play with a lot of good fans. The fans are really nice to see when we go to Nassau. So we're very excited to see how the back half of that season is going to turn out.
Definitely.
A lot of good teams to keep eyes on. Let me just see. Pulling standings back up. Half Hollow Hills has really rebounded nicely since last season. They had a little bit of a down year. Really starting to make the adjustment into the style of Nassau after being in Suffolk for all those years, the Dix Hills School District. So they've kind of really refound their stride. They won a Suffolk title 18-19,
and then they won the Suffolk. There was like an invitational in 21. There was that was that COVID year where they had beaten Smithtown that year.
Yeah.
And 1920, they beat Smithtown.
No, 18-19 they won. 1920 Smithtown won. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Maybe it was states that they won then.
It might have been states. I don't have the state stuff. I have the Suffolk championships.
Right.
But yes, so we could have readdressed this in the playoffs, but we'll talk about this right at the end. But yeah, no. So they're really finding their stride now because it is a different style of play out there in Nassau. And Belmore Merrick has had a strong season. Obviously, it's really tough to repeat back-to-back undefeated seasons, and they're not that, but they're still 7-2, and they're having a good season.
Yeah, they're doing their thing right now, and that was one where Valley Stream had beaten them earlier in the year, and that was wondering you don't want the wheels to fall off in that sense. So they've really rebounded nicely. They're one of the league leaders right now as far as goals against go. Granted, they played a little less, I believe, than other teams have, but their stretch is interesting. They gotta go to Long Beach as their first games, their welcome back game. Then they go to they gotta play Oceanside. Garden City's another one where they're gonna come out and they're gonna give them a good run for their money, and then they go against Massapequa as well. Syosset to end the year, no less. So not an easy stretch coming up for them.
No, there's not. And there's not an easy stretch either for Long Beach.
No.
The way that they're going to finish, they've only played 7 games. So they're going to have a bunch of games in a little amount of days. They're going to play 13. No, they don't play 20 games. They play
10 more.
10 more. Yep. So they play 17 total games in Nassau.
Yep.
So they're going to play 10 games in the span of a month.
Look at that first 5. Garden City, Belmore Merrick, Bethpage, Massapequa, Syosset. That's...
Yep.
Good luck. Good luck, Marines players, on that one. That's...
Run the gauntlet, boys. Do it for us.
Yeah.
Represent the president, Mike Brown. I don't know if I should say that. No, I did. But yeah, no, there's going to be a lot of interesting hockey games. So that'll be a team to keep an eye on because they're 6-1 right now, and they're in good playoff positioning. And with all the games they have in hand, so let's see, they have 2 games on Syosset in hand, which would get them to 2 points back.
Okay.
So not bad positioning. They're just going to have to really do it in that last month.
Absolutely.
So we'll see. Going to be a couple games coming up on the network that we'll be excited to cover.
Definitely.
So should be interesting to watch it unfold, and then we'll again be excited for playoffs. But what do you have to add?
We got one more question. Nassau related.
What do we got?
Who's your team to win it all?
Ooh, you want to start? Since you're Mr. Nassau Hot Take.
I said it earlier on a few episodes back. I really like SCHSHL this year. They're my top team to win it all this year. That being said, though, would not surprise me at this point if Valley Stream makes a run at it. But again, I think Bethpage is playing good hockey. They were one where I had a question mark going into this year. How good would they be? They're up there, but I'll give you a finals preview. How's that sound?
Sure.
Syosset, Belmore, Merrick. That's my finals preview.
Interesting. That's an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering about Belmore Merrick because they were the favorites going in last year as the 1 seed after going 16-0-1?
Yep.
For by the same
They tied
record?
Long Beach their last regular season game.
Yep. So, that obviously didn't end the way that it wanted to end for them.
Mm-hmm.
The way that I'm looking at it, give me half Hollow Hills, Long Beach, and give me Hills.
Ooh.
Give me half Hollow Hills to be the first team to win, unless Long Beach has won a Nassau title. Has Long Beach won a Nassau title? Can we confirm that?
3 years ago or something.
Did they?
I think so.
Because what's interesting is they've won a Suffolk title.
Uh-huh.
So, all right, give me half Hollow Hills to be the second team ever to win both counties.
They're a good team too. They're a feisty little bunch. They took down, I think it was Long Beach a few weeks ago, or maybe it was Belmore.
I don't think they've played yet.
No, they haven't. You're right. So it was Belmore. No, Belmore beat them. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Long Beach won 2010, 2011. Imagine that commute out to the rinks.
That's not easy.
No. No. So a lot of props to them for winning that.
2 good picks, though. That's for sure. I will say. I think any of those 8 teams total, in all honesty, can win it all. Maybe, I'd say any of those 8 can really take it.
Are you going to throw Garden City into the mix?
I would.
Okay.
I would. The only thing I question for them at the moment is offensive depth. I think their defense is strong.
Sure.
But I think it's, can you outscore a Syosset or a Bethpage?
Sure.
That's what's concerning for me. But we've seen crazier things happen.
No, we have.
Last year, this year, again, like we said before, I didn't expect Valley Stream to make playoffs this year. Look where they are. They're a 5 seed right now. They could play. They could have a home ice advantage in a first round playoff game.
Yeah, I think they will. I think they'll climb because a lot of teams are going to beat up on each other. And Valley Stream's road is definitely unfolding a lot more favorably than some of the others are.
Yeah.
But we'll finish this one up. So we've had a pretty successful year,
Absolutely.
I would say.
I agree.
It's been a fun year. It's been a busy year. What's been some of your favorite memories from 2022?
Ooh, okay. I think the states tournament for Suffolk County and those teams up a little more north of New York State, by the city, I should say, that was a real fun experience because it was hockey all day, every day. You have to be awake at 6 in the morning, and you're there until at least 8 o'clock. Where the way for us is that we're the first ones in the building, and we're typically the last ones out. So we're there before everybody, and we leave after everybody. So I think that's cool, kind of getting a whole glimpse of the arena and the rink, and seeing everybody come in, and that excitement too is something that's And
we're seeing everybody, whereas some teams might only see the teams that they're playing, their own team.
Yeah.
So that was a very fun time. Looking forward to going back this year. What else you got?
I think too the playoff. You don't really understand the magnitude of high school hockey until you're actually there, whether it be working or seeing someone there. I think we've gotten a better understanding, especially as when we first started, of how important it is to these kids and just the parents and the fans too. They take it to such a extreme and serious level that when the playoffs come, it's standing room only. Even opening night this year with Kings Park and St. Anthony's, the kids were sitting down on the floor.
Yeah,
like that's one where it's like, boy, like these kids want it just as bad as the players who are actually playing on the team. So the kids get up for it just as much as the players do, and I think that's something that's, when you look at it for these players 10, 20 years down the road, it's like, I was blessed to be a part of that. And it's, especially with you and I too playing college, such high levels of sports ourselves, you look back at it now and it's like, damn, I wish.
Yeah.
Those were the days. You miss those and being around people and being around the same, uniqueness of the sport.
You do. The inception of this company was, as our president, Mike Brown, told us, his idea for it was, what would I have wanted when I was 16?
Yeah.
This would have been sick when we were 16.
Absolutely.
And now we're way past that, but,
Elder statesman.
No, those are two very good memories. I can't wait. I'm so excited for the playoffs.
Oh,
I cannot wait.
Mm-hmm.
I think another fun thing was watching our lacrosse coverage this year.
Oh, yeah.
We covered Long Island Lutheran,
Mm-hmm.
and their run all the way to a state championship. We got to go up to Manhattanville College in Westchester, and watch that unfold.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. We took a toe dip into the baseball world.
We did.
That was an experiment. That was fun.
Mm-hmm.
But the hockey definitely reigns supreme over it all.
Absolutely.
There's no better feeling than showing up to the rink, feeling the cold air, knowing that you got great games on slate for that night. There's gonna be a ton of people tuning in. The parents are enjoying it. The kids are enjoying it. We hope. But they put out such great products every night, and it's just such a pleasure to be able to cover this and do this for a job. Yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun, and I'm so blessed to have been given this opportunity and this platform. And 2022 is a great year, so we'll see what's in store for 2023.
Only uphill from here. That's definitely
absolutely. And just one last thing. So since we're talking about 2023 and we're going into it, we've had a different winner of Suffolk County for the last 4 years, and since it was asked over Nassau, who are you taking to win Suffolk? St. Anthony's is looking for their, I believe it's, let me get it, 1, 2, 3.
How many totals are you looking at right now?
10. They're looking for their 11th title in like the last 30 years, which is crazy. They went on a stretch. I didn't even know this. I saw a plaque the other day in the rinks that just like shocked me. Sachem's looking for their first title since 2009. Smithtown since 2020. Ward Melville could make if they make it in. They haven't won since 2018. Middle Country won in 2010. Connecticut Sayville won back in 2013. They were in the finals last year. West Islip won in 2015. But that's it on the board. It goes back as far as 93, 94. So like the East Islips, the KPCs. Although I guess East Islip's inception was 94. Yeah, so East Islip's looking for their first ever title. Northport, I don't believe has won one. They had a really good chance last year. Yeah. So who are you looking at who's your pick?
Tough, man. It's tough.
Very tough.
Honestly, like any of these teams can do it. It's real. We said it earlier on when the season started. The competition this year is just incredible compared to last year. Like you look at any of these teams, and anyone can beat anyone on any given night. But it's really hard to look past Kings Park Homac. I think here's my reason for it. Give them the reason, man. The reason I think it is just they're a very heavy senior group. I think if they don't win it this year, they're not going to next year.
That was the storyline for Northport last year. Heavy senior group. Really good season. Now, obviously, no one's matching the season that Northport had regular season-wise last year. But they can have greater success.
Absolutely. I think these kids... Another thing, too, is that they came so close. Like, Northport didn't come close in the year prior. Kings Park came close. They were 40 seconds away from forcing overtime against St. Anthony's in the semis. They lose to St. Anthony's a second time at States. I think they're right there, and that's got to be fuel onto the fire for them. That has to be. I think if you don't, because like if we're gonna go way too, I mean we haven't even finished here.
Give it to us. I know what you're gonna say. Just say it.
If we're talking a way too early 23, 24 pick.
Oh, okay. That's not where I thought you were going, but go ahead.
Do you want me to keep going with this?
No, keep going. Yeah.
If we're talking a way too early 23, 24 pick, I think it's East Islip. I think East Islip wins it next year. It's gonna be tough, but I think if they don't win it this year, I think it's Kings Park this year.
Very interesting. Yeah, I could see that.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, I just barring last night's game, East Islip might have their number. I just don't know who's stopping St. Anthony's, man. They're so good.
No, they are.
They're so good. And so many people wrote them off.
Yep.
And I was kind of ready to write them off. I was like, maybe they just lost it.
Yeah.
They had the same team, but who knows? And who knows what they were going through.
Yeah. And we've seen St. Anthony's with reversity, too. They're down 1-0 in the finals last year. They win 2 straight. We know what they're capable of.
Oh, they're absolutely capable of so many great things. And they won the states. And then they went to nationals and made noise there. I just don't know. I don't know, man. I'm sure somebody can. And maybe East Islip's the team. Maybe they just have their number. And maybe we'll get a Smithtown East Islip rematch. Or maybe we'll get Kings Park East Islip, which would be very interesting to see that offense go up against that defense.
So we gave Nassau finals prediction. You have St. Anthony's winning it all. Who's taking them on them? I'll give you mine. Who's taking Kings Park on them? You give me yours.
Give me St. Anthony's Smithtown.
Ooh.
And give me the Friars in 3.
Okay. Interesting.
Now, this isn't rooting interest either, so please don't come onto the broadcast and think that I'm getting loud for one team. I know sometimes I think to myself, I'm like, am I rooting too much for one team? We're very, very ESPN, TNT style, 50-50 neutral broadcast, but we get excited for big things.
Right.
And I'm a Smithtown kid at heart.
Yeah.
I went to Hop Hog High School. So to say that my team's going to lose takes a lot.
KPC over the Bulls in 3.
Wow, that's a great matchup. Another matchup I'd really like to see, though, if the Friars don't make it, is Smithtown East Islip. I want to see that in the playoffs.
Can you imagine?
I don't care if it's the semifinals. I would love for it to be the finals because that would be so cool to see that 3-game matchup where it's like that's the winner because it's so even right now. And I guarantee you we're getting at least one overtime game in that series if it happens. That's my ideal finals prediction. What I want to see is Smithtown East Islip. What I think I'm gonna see is St. Anthony's Smithtown, and then I think you do hold true with I think Kings Park will make some noise in states this year.
Yeah, should be fun.
It will be very fun. But I think we are winding it down.
Yeah,
we've had a long episode, but I think it kind of makes up for taking our little hiatus. We had a lot to cover. It was a lot of fun. Good to be back.
Definitely. We're
going to start putting out more consistent episodes. The next thing and the last thing of 2022 that we have coming up is the All-Star Game. Should be a ton of fun. And just to tease this right now, we have confirmed a special guest on the broadcast of the All-Star Game. So stay tuned for Monday, December 26th. Tune in to see who that's going to be. Very exciting. We're very excited about it. I know he's very excited about it. And you should be very excited about it too. But we're very excited for 2023. Want to thank everybody for all your support, love, watching, helping us along the way with your feedback, making this such an enjoyable experience for us. 22 was a blast. 23 is only going to be better, and there's going to be a lot of great things to come. Yeah, I just, I appreciate everybody that's ever watched, tuned in, left a comment, a like. You all mean the most in the world to us. Every 3,900 of you on Instagram, and over the 3,000 on YouTube. It really does mean a lot. So for me, Vin, everyone here at LA Sports Network, thank you.
Yeah, something special. It really means a lot to us, and the fact that we've been able to see it grow for over a year now puts it into real perspective of how much it means to both of us and how much it means to you guys too. That's why we love doing this, and quite honestly, most of the time never feels like a true job because it's something that we love to do, and we love doing this for not just the kids but the parents themselves. We get the reviews from all you guys and even the criticism too. We take it seriously because we want this thing to be something special going forward.
No, we do. And we want it to last forever because these games will be here forever for you guys to watch, show your kids, grandkids, as far back as you want it to go.
Absolutely.
But I think that'll do it.
Yeah.
For the last time in 2022, for everybody here at the LI Sports Network, Vinny Matula, Dylan Flynn, we're signing off. We will see you in 2023. Thank you so much again for all your support. and we can't wait to keep going with you in the future.